under the existing formula, funding is based on population and the length of roads. It doesn't take into account factors such as growth patterns and local community needs. Mr Brereton proposed to change the formula, which is administered by the state, so that 50% of annual funds could be allocated on a needs basis. This year, that would be about $21 million. But Federal Transport Minister Peter Morris hit the idea on the head, saying that the old formula should continue for another year. Mr Brereton says he's very disappointed by that decision.
Basically because the existing formula is biased towards well-developed areas, and it does not provide sufficient funds for the very needy areas, particularly the growth areas of the state. We believe that road funds should be distributed on a needs-based formula, and we hope that the federal government in 12 months' time will think again.
The federal government wants six new diesel-electric submarines to replace its aging Oberon class in the early 1990s. The project will cost an estimated $2.6 billion, and Newcastle wants a piece of the action. Last Monday, contracts were signed with major contenders for the $32 million project definition study. Sweden's Kochum AB is one contender, and West Germany's HDW is another. HDW is in partnership with Eglo Engineering for the study. HDW's Managing Director, Mr Dirk Vatniers, and the Project Manager, Mr Wilhelm von Stunte, have been in Newcastle for the past 2 days, inspecting local industries which are seeking involvement in the contract. They've been joined by Dr John White and Dr Banks from Eglo. Dr White says cost and quality are the two main criteria in selecting a site.
Our criteria is to perform a commercial project, which means we must produce the submarines to the correct standard and quality so that the performance is correct at the end of the day. We must also perform the project in time, and we must come up with the best price.
You must be aware that there's a great deal of political lobbying going on over this contract. Does that affect your decision making?
No, we've really received specific instructions from the Minister for Defence and therefore the Department of Defence to proceed regardless of the state political lobbying, because the determination of the Department of Defence and the Minister is to have a commercial project which is going to be successful for Australia.
And while states around Australia compete for the site, what about the competition between HDW and Kochum?
We have been in other places around the world in competition with the Swedes, and it's always been a very good competition.
The Police Department's Community Relations Bureau was only set up last year and has appointed 5 coordinators so far to look into issues affecting Aboriginals, ethnic races, homosexuals, publicity, promotions and youth. The Bureau organises and runs schemes of Neighbourhood Watch, Safe Houses and Blue Light Hospital. However, a major tour to be held in the Hunter will take place next month, and the area's young people will be asked to participate.
We're going to be planning a Youth Drug Summit meeting where we'll be inviting young people and organisations to attend a day, organised through the District Community Relations Coordinator Dale Kemp here in Newcastle, to come along and talk about what are the problems with drug abuse by young people in this area. And from that day, 4 young people will be nominated to attend a major youth drug summit in Sydney on the 5th of December.
Talking to youth workers this morning, was there any one major point that really came up?
They were very concerned over the issue of the new juvenile cautioning system, which starts on the 1st of September. This is a new system where police have the option now of not charging a young person for an offence which isn't a very major offence, for a minor offence, and there'll be 4 levels of cautioning that the police have open to them, and this will save a lot of young people from being put into institutions which can often be very detrimental to them.
250 ancillary staff members from primary and secondary schools throughout Newcastle attended the meeting. Organisers claim that the Department of Education is attempting to implement a new staffing formula for ancillary workers without adequate consultation with the Public Service Association. Ancillary staff include teachers' aides and clerical assistants. The new staffing formula is to be introduced in primary schools from the 9th of September and in secondary schools next year. The association claims 440 people throughout the state, including 76 Newcastle workers, would have their hours reduced from full-time to a day and a half a week under the formula. Last night, ancillary staff voted in favour of strike action if negotiations with the Education Department break down.
The sport of cycling has once again attracted a top-class field of athletes to the Hunter with this weekend's Matara Cycle Classic. In the past, the Hunter has played an important part in Australia's Cup cycle race, the Commonwealth Games Cycle. Last year, several sections of that race were run in the Hunter, and there's little doubt it's brought together one of the finest stories in Australia's cycling history. This Sunday, the Hunter Amateur Cycle Club will run the annual Matara Cycle Classic from Torres on Island. This year's Matara Classic has attracted the best field in that race's history. Today, the four-man New Zealand road racing team arrived in Newcastle, ready for the weekend cycling. That team is among many top-line cyclists competing.
This year's field is probably the best we've ever had, with every top rider from New South Wales, apart from 4 that have gone to Tasmania for the Tour of Tasmania. Up there we've got 2 grades running to Cessnock in return.
What sort of names have you got in that event?
Probably the 2 big names are the Eddie Salas, who's current Australian champion, and Kevin Nichols, gold medalist from Olympics.
This Northern-Self 1.5-inch quick firing gun was installed at Fort Scratchley in 1898 and was one in 3 of the same make. However, in 1918, 2 of the guns were taken to the School of Artillery at Sydney's North Head and have spent the last 60 years stationed as a showpiece outside the Sergeant's Mess. After being the proud possession of the Royal Australian Artillery Historical Society, this gun has been given to the fort's military museum on permanent loan, and with a little help from the Army, the weapon was carefully placed back into its rightful position.
We are rather excited, yes, particularly since it's come at the end of 2 years very hard work trying to get the gun. It's the only gun that we have that has ever been in the harbour defence section of the fort's defences.
It will be some time before the gun will be on public show. However, it will no doubt become another valuable attraction of Fort Scratchley. This was the sight that confronted employees at the centre this morning. More than $2,000 worth of books, which were on sale to help run the non-profit Newcastle Ecology Centre, were ripped apart and scattered on the floor. Ironically, all the free material was left intact. Director of the centre, David Ross, says he has no idea who would have destroyed the books so senselessly.
It's amazing to me that anybody would be so paranoid if there is a reason about the environment movement to do something like this, but all we can guess is that just mindless vandalism.
At this stage, the duration of the strike at Morisset is indefinite, but nurses will meet on Friday to consider their next move. Nursing staff at Hunter Hospital will meet tomorrow to decide whether they will strike. Meanwhile, executive staff at Morisset have been left floundering by the walkout and say that without volunteers, they will be in desperate straits.
This is a major crisis for the hospital, and we desperately need volunteers from the public. The previous times the volunteers have been an enormous assistance to us. We're uncertain at this stage when the nurses will be back. They're out in support of colleagues in Sydney, and while senior executive nursing staff will be there and medical staff, we really desperately need the support of the public to help our patients.
Are you at all sympathetic towards the complaints of the nurses?
Well, I can certainly understand their wish to push for the best quality of public patient care, because this is an issue in the psychiatric hospitals in this stage and elsewhere. So I'm in sympathy with that. I'm just concerned that we provide for the patients through this period and we don't set their needs aside.
Okay, where you go? Competing in his first Australian title, along with 8-year-old Ruth Forbes from Newcastle. Both will be leading the time top free station after being selected for their state titles last May. It's the second time for 11-year-old Ruth Forbes and the third for Jess Young from Cessnock. Although Jess is absent from today's training, she's a favourite for the title in the intermediate men's figure event, after winning his sections in both the 1983 and 1984 championships. And for 18-year-old Judith Mason and her partner Bruce Knight, the test will come next week when they compete in the novice free dance event. Although both have attended the Australian Championships before, it's the first time that they've competed together. And after only 8 months as a team, the competition will be hard.
Well, it's very tough competition. The Victorians and Queenslanders are both very good, and South Australians and Western Australians are creeping up. South Australians go to America every so often, so it's very tough, but we just have to wait and see. Are you confident in your performance together?
Well, the way we've been practicing at the moment, it's felt really good. We're happy with the way we've been skating, and as long as we skate the way we have been, we'll all be happy with our performance up in Queensland.
Vic says he's enjoyed his time in local government. During those 47 years in Newcastle, he served 147 aldermen and 7 town clerks. Today on his retirement, the current town clerk, Barry Lewis, gave Vic a memento of the council's appreciation for his loyalty and devotion to duty. Vic says the greatest improvement during his years in the health department has been the lessening of pollution.
We were very ashamed of the air quality way back in 1947. And because of the action that was initiated in this city, it's probably the best air quality in any industrial city in the world today.
What action was that?
Well, in 1947, the council established a smoke abatement advisory panel, and that panel negotiated with industrialists and all the polluters to such an extent that by 1979 about 87% of the problem had been removed. And today we're travelling at a very good air quality, particularly in regard to sulphur dioxide content. It's about 1/3 of the WHO or the World Health Organisation's target, and that's pretty good.
Going Sane is the brainchild of John Sanford, who is the writer and executive producer of the movie. For at least the next week, the film crew has taken over the property Edenvale just outside Vasey. According to its producer, Tom Jeffrey, he has a top crew and cast for the $2 million film, with John Waters taking the lead role of Martin Brown. Martin decides at the peak of his career as a mining engineer that he's not particularly happy with his life, but he's not quite sure how to change it.
For the rest of your life. But he just figures that half his life's gone by and he's faced with his own mortality, and he doesn't like his job, his wife, anything really about the direction in which he's headed, so he decides to change it. And it looks to the rest of the world as if he's going mad, but he is, to all intents and purposes, hence the title, going sane.
John, the movie's been described as a perfect vehicle for you. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think it's a great vehicle for me. I mean, when I first read the script, I was immediately enamoured. I thought that was a nice contemporary black comedy, I suppose, would be one way of describing it, although I don't like putting labels onto films in general. And a great role, because he's a man who goes through a metamorphosis, and any part in which you see somebody develop and change is always good for the actor.
Going Sane should be distributed to the cinemas by May next year.
There you go, 23-year-old Michael Britz was in the water at his home base, Bar Beach, today on the eve of his journey to the US. Britz, or Mort as he's known in surfing circles, will compete in several events in America and Japan in a bid to break his way into the top 30 in the Association of Surfing Professional rankings. Britz hopes to take part in 11 of the 19 ASP-rated events and joins other locals Mark Richards and Cole Smith on the list of Australians to make a serious attempt to crack it on the pro circuit. Mort has finished in the top 10 in the Australian Professional Surfing Association rankings for the last 4 years, with his best a second. He plans to return home for the Coke Surf Trials and Newcastle's BHP Steel International in November. Newcastle's favourite surfing son, Mark Richards, will also be competing in America and Japan.
Newcastle's star player Gary Harbour is down to the last 8, with the quarter-finals now underway at the Lake Macquarie Sports Centre. Harbour has now gathered much experience since his boyhood talent was first discovered. Strait has a strong chance to win on his home soil. He has received coaching around the world and is now up with the best players ever produced in this country. Candace Carroll and Bruce at the ladies' title, with a visiting Korean pair winning the men's doubles from Harbour and Victorian Rodney Charles at 21-14 and 21-16. The tournament will conclude tonight.
Barry Salter makes his living from lawn bowls. He runs his own bowl store in Adamstown and spends the rest of his time adding to his long list of local, national and international victories. Now the South African Bowling Association has asked him and 3 unnamed bowlers from England, New Zealand and Ireland to tour. They will play in 6 or 8 tournaments and give coaching clinics. The South Africans are paying all travelling and accommodation costs and will also give Salter more than $5,000 in expenses. On top of that, Salter may earn up to $6,000 in prize money. He has represented Australia in South Africa twice before, in 1973 and 76, but on those occasions there was no moral pressure against the visit. Increasing racial violence over apartheid and the planned rebel cricket tour have changed all that. However, Salter maintains that although he does not like apartheid, he has a right to earn his living as a professional bowler.
I've been around the world in a lot of places playing bowls, and politics are not talked about in bowling clubs. Maybe there's a little bit of discussion about it, but almost never ever talked about in bowling clubs.
Do you think that sport and politics mix?
No, I don't. It probably occurs, but not as far as I'm concerned. I'm not interested in it. I'm a bowler. I was a motor mechanic, and I was a boxer, and I'm a bowler, and I've got too many friends around this world to get involved in. Unfortunately, what I call petty things like politics, interfering with the games that's as great as bowls.
Have you had any criticism of your decision to go?
No, on this day it's been the other way. 50 or 60 people have rang and passed through our shop here and said to me, "Good on you, mate, I wish I could go too," so that's good enough for me. Nobody has been the other way around, and Everyone should make up their own mind. We're supposed to have a free country, haven't we?